Now, before you fall asleep at the sight of an economic report, trust me, I get it. Hold tight, because things are not looking good, and you should know why. The Portland Metro Chamber's 2025 State of the Economy report is a lengthy data and graph-filled webpage that paints a less than ideal picture of economic metrics here in Northwest Oregon. And less than ideal may be generous. Population loss in Multnomah County, regional job losses despite the national labor market growing. People, quote, voting with their feet, leaving the Portland area due to high housing costs and taxes. And when it comes to real estate attractiveness, Portland ranked 80th out of 81, second to last in attracting outside investment, in front of only Hartford, Connecticut. And those are just some lowlights from the report's executive summary. There are a few bright spots. We'll highlight those in a minute. But let's get an overview of where things stand, and then we'll bring in the lead economist for a live interview to take us deeper into the findings. Let's start with a look at population in the metro area and across the river in Clark County, Washington. The report shows that Clark County is booming on the bottom right. All of the data above the zero line on the graph. Washington County in the bottom left is the only regional county with a noteworthy natural population increase. That's in orange. Clackamas County is stagnant. Multnomah County is hemorrhaging residents, only seeing gains from international migration from abroad. That's the little yellow line.
The key challenges here are our population is in decline. This is not new this year. This was very known last year, and we have just added one more year of what was already a pretty consistent trend.
So where are many of those Multnomah County residents going? Many of the higher income folks are either going north to Clark County or down to Clackamas County. These graphs right here show the annual average income of people moving into the four counties. Multnomah County has by far the lowest average, just over $73,000 for people coming into the county. Washington County is next, just under $90,000. But Clackamas and Clark counties are both above $105,000 annually. Those high-income residents are taking their purchasing power with them, mostly out of Multnomah County, as people with lower income move in. The report says that trend became pronounced in 2018 and only accelerated during the pandemic. And when it comes to the overall economic picture, the Portland region has long been considered elastic. The president of the Portland Metro Chamber says that's no longer the case.
We know one thing has been certain for almost 3 decades. As the U.S. economy grows, Portland and Oregon grow faster. And as the economy across the United States shrinks or contracts, we shrink harder and contract harder. The news today is hard to share, but that is no longer the case. While the U.S. economy continues to expand, our community is not.
And that brings us to the grim headline that's popping up around town after the report was unveiled this morning. And you see it there, right there on the bottom of your screen, the urban doom loop.
The language here is strong, and there's a reason for that, because this isn't an afterthought, right? Urban doom loops are a thing, and when you look at the data, you can make the case that we are in one or that we are on the precipice of being in one. That distinction matters. The point is, once you are in one, you typically don't know it until many years later, and it is very hard to get out of that pattern.
All right, joining us now live is the man who said that this morning, Dr. Mike Wilkerson. He's with Eco Northwest as a public policy consultant and was the lead economist on this State of the Economy report. Dr. Wilkerson, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, let's start with that doom loop idea. What exactly is that? And do you believe Portland and the metro region are currently in one?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think I understand, why it's headline grabbing. It sounds really bad, and I think in reality it has the potential of being bad. But what it effectively is saying is just that when a certain sequence of events happen, they have feedback effects that are negative in consequence. And so when we have a demand decrease in our region and in our central city, that has downstream impacts that affect public finance, for example. And as public finance is impacted, we see currently budget constraints across all of our local levels of government in the city and the county, et cetera. And as that continues to play out, oftentimes it gets worse before it gets better, and it requires urgent action.
So what needs to be done to get out of a doom loop? What impacts should Portlanders and others, say in the metro, potentially prepare for?
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges of why they're so pervasive is they're not silver bullet type, here's one thing we have to fix. The broad answer is growth is the answer. And so in a period of time where over the last several years, we've seen population and jobs both declining, and we've seen inter-regional migration patterns change, I think this is the point of this is not that we are in an urban doom loop. It is that we need to prioritize and understand that growth should be a priority. And for many decades, we've been ambivalent towards growth in this region. We've benefited from the fact that our population has grown, but we haven't really aligned an economic development strategy around the goals around what we want to prioritize in this region. And that has to be the takeaway here about what that pathway forward is.
So you mentioned today that in each of the last 2 years, more than $1 billion of income left Multnomah County to go elsewhere. That may seem obvious to some, but what were the biggest reasons for that exodus?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, what we're seeing is two trends emerging. It's the locations of where people are moving and the dollar amounts of incomes on average that are associated with them. What we are seeing is that the key distinction in, let's say, Multnomah County is where we used to be a net importer of people from all around the country. That has changed, and we are now losing people to all other places in the country, including Clark County. And we look at the average income of individuals or in households who are leaving, that gap used to be almost none between the average income of people who are moving in and who are moving out, and today it has grown. And the question of why, I think one certainly component of that is the tax value proposition. So as the taxes have increased on the Oregon side of the river, on the Washington side of the river is a very different tax regime, and people can vote with their feet to react to that. That's not the only reason. Certainly housing affordability is a part of that as well. And certainly jobs, when we're struggling for jobs here, people are going to look for opportunities to progress.
Yeah. So let's talk about real estate attractiveness. Portland is 80th out of 81 cities in attracting outside investment. Did that piece surprise you?
It absolutely surprised me. I think that was the most surprising and frankly probably is the most concerning part of this. Portland in 2017 peaked as the number 3 attractive market in the country. And from there, you're always going to come down and revert a little bit. And into the pandemic, I think largely fueled by the negative perception of what was happening in Portland, certainly what was happening in Portland as well, both real and perception, we dropped into the 50s. What we know is in the last year, we've made meaningful progress. Surveys show that meaningful progress. People can feel it. We can see it. We assumed when that survey came out that would be reflective of that and we would go up. So to not only drop, but to drop to 80th was very, very surprising, and I think is probably the largest headwind currently facing our region.
So that's a lot of not so great news, but let's switch over to find some optimism here. What are the silver linings for Portland?
Yeah, I think the silver linings are, again, this is a short run moment in time. And what the region has been historically good at doing is leveraging the natural amenities that we have here, our climate, our people, our culture, our arts, etc. And so I think that is always what has attracted people to Portland. And the same number of people that have wanted to move here, have moved here, is consistent. So it's not that people are no longer coming here. It's that we've had more of a challenge retaining people. And so to me, the silver lining is we look at the last year, the airport is a shining example of we can do big things that result in meaningful impacts. We can look at the WNBA franchise expansion here as this becoming an epicenter of women's sports. We can look at the James Beard market as a recognition that this is a worldwide culinary destination. So I think there are lots of things that we can continue to point to. I think the point of the report is to say, really, we have to focus and prioritize that growth is no longer a given and that we have to compete in order to continue to grow.
All right, Dr. Mike Wilkerson, lead economist on this report. Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
All right, so what are your thoughts on what Dr. Wilkerson had to say? What do you think about this doom loop idea? Anything surprise you? Why or why not? Email us at thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail 503-226-5090.